Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have the latest from the live radar, run through the latest UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, as we are going to see some very oscillating conditions to start February with some very cold weather, with a bit of snow in the north and some cold frosty nights for many, sprinkled between weather fronts and some slightly milder air. We're not expecting anything too remarkable, but generally things will be very up and down. However, as we head into the latter part of next week, it is looking likely now that we do see a Scandinavian high setting up. We've seen a substantial shift within the models today, not in terms of their actual output, but more in terms of their consistency. All operational runs this evening, and a large number of the ensemble, 70-80% now, are pulling in a cold, if not very cold, easterly wind into that first half of February. Timing's still a little bit up in the air, and of course the intensity, as it all depends on what sort of cold pool and the exact wind direction that we do see. But pretty much all runs, bar from the odd outlier at the moment, or at least this evening, are producing some cold easterly winds there into early February. And of course, coming in from the east, it does mean it will be very cold, dry air, lots of frost, potentially a very cold wind chill, and of course, any precipitation would be falling as snow. So of course, we'll explore that in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, do like and subscribe. And remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, we're in between weather systems at the moment. We're in this slightly fresher and slightly drier air, and it means that for many we will see some frosts in the next couple of evenings, as we've got one weather front that cleared into Europe, and then we've got more weather fronts out in the Atlantic, and we're kind of in between at the moment. As I said, in slightly chilly air, we will see frosts developing. You can see at the moment in the far south and southeast, still got quite a lot of cloud from that weather front that has dissipated away. But further northwards and westwards, where we've got those clearer skies, you can see temperatures getting down towards the low single digits, already around 7:30 in the evening. And as we head through the next few hours into the early hours of Saturday, temperatures will fall well below freezing in many of these areas. So definitely regional variations, but generally quite a cold night. Now, if you go over to the latest UKV now, you can see that weather front clearing through earlier this afternoon, completely clearing out into Europe, and it's kind of spread away now. And you can see still a bit of lingering cloud and drizzle in the far southeast through this evening, but where we have those clearer skies, frosts will develop for the first day of February. We do have another weather front that's trying to approach from the west as we do head into Saturday, but of course we are seeing high pressure building in, the same high pressure that is eventually going to extend towards Scandinavia. It's slowly building over the top of us at the moment, but it can't completely dominate, and we still see these transient weather fronts pushing through over the top of it. And that's what we see as we do head into Sunday. Very slow moving weather fronts. Although it's not particularly heavy rain, it's very slow moving, so it could dump quite a bit of rain across parts of the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. Into Sunday though, that's rain, and that weather front bumps into the high pressure and loses all its intensity and really fizzles away just into some thicker cloud as we do head through Sunday evening. As we head into Monday, another weather front tries to push in. This one has a bit more success, but as you can see again, it weakens significantly as it clears southwards and eastwards, and eventually just pushes us into very cold and dry air. And you can see that from the upper air temperatures here. Very cold, polar maritime air pushing in. This is not the easterly wind that we're expecting to see in the subsequent days, but this is just cold air coming in from the northwest on the backside of one of these very weak areas of low pressure, as we do see high pressure slowly extending in. And because we are seeing lots of oscillating air masses, the temperatures will be very up and down, but we will see colder and milder air at the surface over the coming days. You can see through this evening in those northern and western regions dropping down towards freezing as we do head into Saturday morning, but further south and eastwards and in the far west where we've got a bit of cloud, more around the mid-single digits. For Saturday afternoon, the first day of February, it's going to be an average day. Temperatures 4 to 7 degrees for most, a bit milder further westwards where we've got that cloud and rain pushing in. Overnight into Sunday, a frost in the far east where we've got clearer skies, but for most hovering a couple of degrees above freezing. And into Sunday, again another chilly day, generally around average or slightly below average, sort of 2 to 7 degrees. As we progress into Monday morning, another quite harsh frost in the far east. Again, wherever we see clearer skies, we will see those temperatures plummeting as we do have higher pressure around. And then as you can see into Monday, a slightly milder day, more around average, maybe slightly above average, 6 to 11 degrees. But eventually the cold air does return, a bit of the frost in the far southeast there into Tuesday, and by Tuesday afternoon still milder than average, but as we progress into Wednesday that much colder air does arrive, and by Monday afternoon many are back towards average or below average and trending colder there, and that's setting the scene for the first half of February, as it does look like in the subsequent days that's when that easterly wind could get going. We can see with the mean sea level pressure, the high pressure is now firmly building in, and we're expecting it to move northwards and eastwards in the subsequent days, and that's where we could see that very cold easterly. And that is exemplified on the latest GFS, which does go for a pretty prolonged easterly wind. Got a bit of doubts with this because it does have a very stationary blocked pattern as we do head into the middle third of February. But it would deliver a very cold and potentially at times wintry spell. Because there is a lot of high pressure around, and because we do see easterly winds coming off the near continent, there's not as much moisture as if there was a northwesterly or a northerly with weather fronts coming in off the Atlantic. There is a lot more touch and go there in terms of actually seeing snowfall, but we would definitely see very cold temperatures and the risk of snow wherever we see precipitation. So you see over the coming days, high pressure is trying to build in, but it comes up against these lows, continuing to try and barrel in off the Atlantic, so it doesn't fully push in. But into the middle of next week, look at this, Wednesday, Thursday, where we get to the end of that UKV run, high pressure has built in. And it extends towards Scandinavia and unlocks the doors to easterly winds. Now, if we look to our east, we haven't got a massive cold pool. Nothing that is exceptionally cold. A few degrees below average for mainland Europe, more towards 5 or 6 degrees below average for the UK. So it is cold, but it's not very cold. If we were looking at beasts from the east type air masses, we'd be looking at minus 15 to minus 20 degrees. We're not even seeing minus 10, at least initially. But minus 5 to minus 8, which is what we're kind of seeing here, is still very cold. As we do head through winter months, would be cold enough to produce temperatures 2 or 3 degrees by day, well below freezing overnight. And of course, coming from the east, it's much drier, which means that all precipitation falling in the sky will fall as snow. And you can see over the coming days, that very cold air builds. It actually intensifies potentially down to that minus 10 point. And it just stays with this constant easterly wind. Even a bit of a cut-off low develops just the far south. And if that happens, there is the risk of actually seeing some snow into the far southeast, so an actual point of moisture. And if we do put on the total snow there, look at this, a bit of snow in the far south. Again, nothing too heavy because, of course, we're not looking at very high precipitation rates because it is still very cold, dry air. You can see that from the dew points here, widely down towards freezing. So it is dry, cold air, so it is less likely to be heavy and disruptive, but still it could cause local disruption, and of course could cause some decent snowfalls in places. So one to keep an eye on. Beyond that, though, we stay with this easterly flow for eventually into the final few frames we do see the westerly winds breaking through potentially a transient snow event before it does start to degrade away. So the latest GFS, no beast from the east, but definitely a very cold and blocked run. Would be persistently cold for a good week or so. We would see snow, we would see widespread overnight freezing temperatures. By day, hardly getting above the low single digits. Of course, we are looking now into February with stronger sun strength and with longer days. It does get a little bit more difficult to see ice days and over daytime temperatures around freezing. It does get a lot more difficult. Those air masses need to be slightly colder than if this was a few weeks ago, but nonetheless it still would be very chilly. The wind chill would make it feel definitely like freezing during the day. And yeah, it would be a really quite cold middle third there to February. Now, the GEM has been more sceptical of the high-pressure system over the last few days, not really developing a major easterly at all on many of its runs, and it's been one of the runs that has been, as I said, more pessimistic and kept that uncertainty. But today, it does show an easterly wind. In fact, you can see as we do progress towards the latter part of next week, we do see that easterly wind develop. Again, no massive cold pool, definitely a chilly air mass, and you can see again, those easterlies trying to come up against this low pressure system, trying to nudge in, but eventually, similar to the GFS, the easterly winds do win out, and we do see a pretty cold air moving in. Again, not a massive cold pool there, but cold enough to give chilly temperatures well below average. There is one very small speck of cold pool just sat to our east, a very cold pool just sitting there. That could head our way and could of course expand as it heads over very dry and cold land. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw further colder blasts there into the middle third of February. Of course, if we did want to see something exceptionally cold, these from the east level, this high would have to be further northwards, and we would have to really wrap around this exceptionally cold air from the Arctic. But because this wind is coming straight from the east and not originating from Scandinavia, it's originating from Eastern Europe and from sort of mainland southern Russia, it is still cold, it's just not exceptionally cold, and that's why, yes, an easterly wind, but no beast from the east at all is looking possible, at least at this stage. And if you do finally compare to the ECMWF, this has just come out, it is broadly very similar. Again, the high pressure struggles to build in over the next few days, but eventually does, and then we do see those easterly winds. Once again, late next week, we do pull in some very chilly air from the near continent. Again, no massive cold pool, and eventually we could actually tap into some milder air as the wind veers more southeasterly, but still an easterly wind, still putting in some very cold air for a time, and very similar to the other runs. So 3 main models today, all agreeing, which is good news for us looking for some consistency. Still a little bit of doubt in terms of the exact timings and intensities, but broadly, as I said, pretty similar at the moment. And the biggest change today is the ensembles. Look at this from the latest GFS. Generally around average or slightly above average over the next few days, but of course, with those high pressure signal, we are going to see chilly nighttime temperatures as well. And of course, the temperatures will drop away at times, especially as we head into next week. You can see, though, massive drop-off there between the 6th to the 12th of February, and even beyond that's quite a long, prolonged colder pattern. Yeah, with plenty of the runs down to -5 to -10, so cold, if not very cold from some of the runs. You can see, though, not many going below -10. That's the kind of threshold for an exceptionally cold easterly wind, one where it's very notable, and of course -15 to -20, that's beast from the east type level, and we're seeing no runs down there. So it is an easterly, it is cold, but we must remember what we can see coming from the east, and we're not seeing anywhere near the sort of extremities that we have seen in the past sort of couple of decades. So cold easterly, but nothing too extreme at this stage. Precipitation does pick up into mid-February. As I said, that low could arrive from the south, and that could mean we see a bit of snow, and that definitely is appearing here from some of the runs. We'll also like to see, as I said, very cold daytime temperatures, 3 or 4 degrees at best, and very cold overnight temperatures. Again, these will be adjusted as we get nearer to the event, but you can definitely see quite a substantial drop-off there. And again, the big signal why we know it's going to be cold is look at the dew points, well below freezing for the majority of runs there once that cold air moves in. And of course, dew points below freezing, upper air temperatures below -5, we are looking at a recipe for precipitation falling as snow. And of course, we need to check out the latest ECMWF. And again, it's not quite as consistent as the GFS. Yes, this is the midnight run, so this is over 12 hours old now, if not 18 hours old. But, again, it is still a model that has come out today, ensemble run, so we do have to keep an eye on it. Of course, there are lots of colder runs here, but there is a little bit more in the way of milder conditions. So, the ECMWF run early this morning, definitely not as confident in that colder pattern, but still definitely there. So not really much of a shift from the ECMWF ensembles, even though the operational run, at least the latest operational run, does pull in the easterly. Of course, this could have been a bit of a flip that we've seen during the day. So if we do have a look at the latest GFS, the midnight run for the GFS, you can see a lot more skepticism. But so perhaps the GFS and most of these operational runs we've looked at, the 12 o'clock runs, have picked up on something during the day. So perhaps we've actually seen a big shifting point during the day. And if that is the case, then I'm expecting that ECMWF midday run that comes out in the next couple of hours to shift substantially colder. So yeah, interesting updates today. Definitely looks like a colder easterly has definitely increased in probability. I am being very sceptical of it, just because we've seen it in the model output a few times during January and it's never come off. So I perhaps thought that, this could be another occasion. But eventually an easterly will come off, and perhaps this is the moment that we do actually see an easterly wind there into the early to middle part of February. That's a good kind of week away from arriving, so there still is lots of adjustments that could be made, but at the moment confidence is increasing for a cold easterly, perhaps 5 to 8 degrees below average, but I must stress we are not looking at a beast from the east. We're not looking at very cold or extremely cold easterly winds, but we're just looking at generally cold, maybe very cold on some of the more extreme runs. So we'll have to wait and see. And of course, there is the possibility of snow, but we are way too early to say that with any detail. So yeah, don't look at any precipitation runs at this stage. We might have a look in a few days' time, but again, it would just be for a bit of fun and just to see what these sort of outcomes could be. At the moment, though, just keeping an eye on that high pressure. The next few days, how it does develop could have big knock-on effects into February. But yeah, it does look like today the models are definitely looking with more confidence at this easterly wind developing. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.